Hello, Logic Up people. Welcome and welcome back to my channel, Logic Up. As I said before, I created this channel to encourage people to use their mind, to think through things instead of just accepting things for what they are, that you were told by the media, by social media, by the government, by any entity. Of course, you have to get data from them, take all the information, but you have to assemble the information. You have to connect the dots, okay, make sense out of the information instead of just accepting the information right off. Because as you know, for you older people, you're living through life, you notice that people always try to convince you, to do things for them, to buy their products, to go on dates with them, to benefit them, basically, okay? And if you're not careful, you're gonna be used, right? If you don't use your brain to think things through, you're going to be convinced to do things that are against your own self-interest. So that's what this channel is about. It's called Logic Up because you have to use logic, okay, to think things through. It may be true what you're told, but you have to analyze it to see if it makes sense, if it passed the logic test before you're accepting it as true. You gotta look at the evidence. You don't just, things may make sense, all right, but it may not be true because the evidence doesn't show it, right? So again, evidence-based, if you can, but at the very least, you use logic and adjust over time, okay? You adjust over time, your view, okay? So the subject for today is college. Is college bad for society? Let's explore that. Because everybody assumes that the more education, the better. I myself believe that all my life. In fact, I went through college, graduated, got a bachelor's degree, and then went on later to get my master's degree in business. So got an MBA. So I have always been an advocate of education or schooling to get education. See, there's a difference between education and schooling, right? Someone can be highly schooled, but they're still not educated. Because if you go to school just to get a degree and you learn nothing, you're highly schooled, but you're not highly educated. So education doesn't, and another thing is education is not always formal, right? If you're educated in a school, hard knocks, right? Then you're still educated. You're just not formally educated. You don't get a degree or certificate from some institution that says you are now certified to be, a bachelor of science, whatever it is. But you're still educated. But the traditional route is that they steer you, right? You go into a formal education program and you come out with a college degree. And then basically they certify you to say that yes, you have gone through this academic program. So in recent years, when I was a young man going to college back in the 80s, the percentage of people in the United States with a bachelor's degree was only 14%. And since then, there was a big push for education, higher and higher education. And, politicians talk about they pour a lot of money into student loans and, tax breaks for universities and schools and things like that. They want to encourage education. And I remember they were talking about the U.S. being behind in education. Other countries are, catching up. And U.S. math and science score was below everybody else in the developing world. And so it was a big alarm. A lot of politicians want to solve that problem, and so they pour a lot of money into getting people to go to college. But here's another thing. Here's another reason why that few people realize why they push education so much, starting around the late 80s to through the 90s and to today. The reason, okay, if you really start to think about, is because the baby boomer generation were in their highest earning years in their 40s and 50s during that time. Okay, the bulk of the baby boomers, they reach that age during the 80s and 90s. Okay, and so there's a lot of them. The baby boomer generation is the biggest generation, bigger than any other generation subsequently. Okay, so they took up all the jobs, and they don't want to leave the workforce, so that the young people, my generation, which is the generation came after the baby boomer, which is the generation X, there's not as many of us, but as the baby boomers, of course, but they don't want us to enter the workforce yet. So what do? They push us back into the school system to delay our entry into the workforce. Okay, that's the reason why. Okay, there's such a big push in education. Now, fast forward 30 years. What happens? Okay, now the rate of bachelor's degree in America is now about 37.5%. So about 38% of the U.S. population now has a bachelor's degree. Okay, for women it's a little more. It's like 39 or 40%, but it's a pretty high percentage. It's like almost more than twice the amount that that people back when I was growing up went to. Is that better? Is that better? Now there's a big thing about student loan repayment excuse, right? The government is forgiving people for student loan debt, at least up to a certain amount. And of course that caused outrage for people like me who work very hard to pay off all my education expenses by myself. Okay, once I enter the workforce, I repay back the loan over years, 10 years. So it's not fair to people like us. But forget about fairness for a second, okay? Because basically we're done. I mean, we paid off our debt, and so what, right? They'll be jealous, right? But if you look at education as a benefit to society, I noticed that not everyone can be college educated. Okay? Look at it. Most people with a bachelor's degree today do not use their degree at all, their training at all. They majored in basket weaving, as I would call it way back when. And their degree does not readily translate to making money, making a living. So as a result, nowadays, you get a lot of waiters and waitresses with a bachelor's degree because they majored in history, or there's just too many of them. I myself, my undergraduate was in sociology. Okay, but back then, the rate of college degree people were a lot less. So I got into management position. I came into the Air Force as an officer, because you can't be an officer without a college degree. And back then, the Air Force needed people with bachelor's degree in sociology or psychology and things like that. Now, not so many anymore. Now it's all technical, right? Just like the business world. If you have a degree in computer science, computer programming, artificial intelligence, computer security, things of that nature, the Air Force will accept you more readily. Non-technical career fields, very few to come by. And there are a lot of those people, okay, with those degrees. Journalism, things like that. And so you have a whole bunch of people that have a lot of student debt, and no jobs to pay off the student debt. And that's why they have a student debt crisis. And that's why the government has to step in and forgive at least to a certain amount for them. So if you look at the big picture, is that good for society? No, because it costs society, right? It costs people money to go to college, through college, and yet they cannot make the money afterwards in order to pay off the loan debt. They're in debt all their lives. It weighs them down. They can't buy a house. They're in too much debt even before they started their life. And the degree that they have from Boondock University that have very low academic standards. So it doesn't really work their brain anyways. So when they come out, they still almost as shallow as someone in their way of thinking, as someone who never attended college. The thing about college that I realized a long time ago, when I was in college as a kid, was that college, okay, you gotta go back when the idea of a university, okay, education started, okay. College is not just a vocational school that now has become, right? College is just a vocational school now, right? You just learn more technical stuff, right? If you learn computer science, for example, it takes 4 years, okay? It doesn't take 2 years like any other vocation, right? True computer science, not just information systems, you know, but computer science, computer programming, okay? Artificial intelligence, things like that, highly technical. That requires at least 4 years of college in order to do that. But if you look at it, it's just a vocational school, isn't it? Because you learn a vocation. You learn how to program computers so that you can go out and you program computers for companies, right? Or provide computer security for companies. It's a vocation school, okay? The original intent of a university was not like that. The original intent of a university is to go there and expand your mind. That's why universities, historically, the ones that have been around a long time, they require you to take humanities, right? History. Why do they do that? You know, that's a big contention with the technical students, right? Students that learn computer science, and I've heard it back when I was in college. Why do I have to take humanity? That's bullshit. That's crib course. That's, you know, Gumby major, right? They call it, right? It's basket weaving, okay? Why do I have to take psychology? It's bullshit. I'm a computer science major, right? So they're looking at it from a vocational standpoint. I'm learning computer science so I can go out and program computers for a company and make money, feed myself, okay? Who cares about history? Who cares about humanities? Okay? But here's the problem with that. We're talking education, university level, high education here. We're not talking about vocational school, okay? A university education is supposed to expand your mind, you know, and teach you how to think. How to think and how you fit in to the larger picture of the world, okay? Of the history of the world, the history of humanity, okay? And it teaches you the human side, okay? Because after you graduated, you know, with a computer science degree or AI degree and make all this money, you have to live as a human being, don't you? Don't you? Because you're a human being. You gotta live. You gotta interact with people, right? So now that you have the big house and the nice cars and vacations and stuff, all right, after a while, you will realize that none of that thrills you anymore, right? How do I fit in? And all the problems that society now face, you can't deal with it. You don't understand the context, in the historical context of things, okay? And God forbid, if you become a manager, okay? I made a video already about the lack of management experience nowadays, okay? With young people being placed in a high management position, they fail, utterly fail. And how do I know that? How do you know that? They look at the stock market. It's crashing. 40% of all companies in the stock market are not making money. They haven't made money. They never did make money. Okay, so they survive on investor money because the investors were hoping that someday they would make money, but they never will because they either deliberately lie, which a lot of them do, con artists. So it's just a Ponzi scheme, or they don't know what the hell they're doing. They can't think long term. They don't see how they fit into things, and that's why they can't. You see that problem? Okay. Most people I found are not fit to go to college. That may sound arrogant, but it's true. Okay. They go to college to learn a vocation in order to make money. They don't really care how they fit in, or how they can change society, how they can improve society, or how their action can hurt society and hurt humanity. See, we reach a point now in our society worldwide where things are falling apart. In case you don't know, things are falling apart. And what's ironic is that we have a lot of highly schooled people nowadays, right? 38% of the US population are bachelor degreed. And yet we got all kinds of problems that are threatening to collapse our society, in case you don't know. In case you have been putting your head in the sand, sticking your head in the sand all this time, you don't see it. It's falling apart. Why is that? We're supposed to have smarter people, yet we create more problems. It's because the 37% means nothing. Okay? They don't learn anything. Most of those people, they graduate from Boondock University somewhere or college somewhere that doesn't have a rigorous academic program. Well, when I say rigorous, what do I mean by that? I know a guy who, I know him for a long time. I know him since I was 8 years old or 7 years old. Okay. He and I went through two very different tracks. When I was going to college, he was out partying and gangbanging. Okay. And I remember telling him then to not do that. I told him, what are you going to do when you in your 40s? Are you going to jump over walls as you rob people? You going to do that? And of course, at that time, he hated me for it. But now it turned out to be true. Now he's in his 40s and struggling. He told me he's behind. He's behind. He works a normal job. He finally went back and got his college degree. I don't know where. A normal job. He's just a logistics guy. He tracks car parts. That's all he does. And, he has 2 kids and no wife. His wife left him. So he's a single father, struggling. He has to share with another guy, rent an apartment and share with another guy. And he said he's working hard to save up money to buy a house in order to leave it for his kids because he's behind. I'm like, well, I tried to tell you that 40 years ago, Holmes Lice. 30 years ago, I tried to tell you that, but you didn't believe me, did you? All you wanted to do was gangbang and party and screw around with, women. Okay. Back to what I was saying. So he said that he too has a college degree. Okay, great. I think, because of that, he got this job instead of, But I could tell, that his view is very shallow. Whenever we talk about any issue, he doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to drill into anything deep in order to come up with the reason. That's basically how he lived his life, all his life. Since we were young, that's how he thinks. He doesn't want to see anything beyond his nose, basically. And his supposed education didn't really help him, because college is supposed to change you. After 4 years of writing papers and shit, and doing mathematical calculus, right? You're forced to learn to think deeply, right? when you write the research paper, man, you better have your ducks lined up to support your claim. Otherwise, the teacher's gonna throw it back at you with a freaking F, right? If the academic program is rigorous enough, the teacher's gonna throw it back to you and point out things, and you feel very embarrassed. You feel stupid, right? But that's great. That's what caused you to think beyond what you used to. And then after 4 years of that, you become a very, very deep thinker, right? Somebody that doesn't just look at the surface. Somebody that wants to know deeper than that. What's causing problems, for example? Or how can we improve a certain process? Okay? People that don't go through a rigorous academic program do not have that. And here's another thing too. It's not the same for people who get, it's not likely the same for people who later in their life get a bachelor's degree or higher. It's not likely to be the same as when they get it, in their late teens and early 20s. Why? Here's why, okay? And they have studies on this, so it's not like, it's my opinion. That's another thing that people need to learn. There's a difference between opinion and facts, okay? Opinion is what you have no proof. You just think that way. A fact is you actually have proof. You have evidence to support your opinion, okay? I'll give you an example. If I say blue is a beautiful color, that's my opinion. I think it's beautiful. Some people don't. Some people like black. I see a lot of black cars driving around, right? Some people like the color black on cars. They think it's cool. They don't like blue. So what? It's their opinion, isn't it? It's not a fact, okay? A fact is the blue sky reflects this frequency on the electromagnetic spectrum, the exact frequency of blue, whatever it is. That's a fact. Hard, cold facts. It's not opinion. It's not, I like it, I don't like it, it's beautiful, it's not beautiful. Doesn't matter, okay? The sky reflects blue spectrum, and the blue spectrum is defined as this frequency in the electromagnetic spectrum. That's a fact, all right? So when you go to college, that's what you learn. You learn to distinguish between facts and opinion. You learn to dig deep into problems and issues in order to come up with a viable solution. Okay? You don't look at the surface. You have a longer attention span than someone who hasn't gone through it or didn't go through a rigorous academic program. I mean, come on. You sit in the freaking audience of 500 students, right, for at least 45 minutes, and you have to concentrate on what the instructor is telling you, professor is telling you. Okay, you have to sift through what the heck he's talking about, and you gotta write the paper on it, or research something on it, or solve a mathematical problem. Okay, you do that every single day for like 4 years. Of course, you're gonna change. Your mind is gonna expand. Okay, if you haven't gone through that, of course your mind's not gonna expand. Okay, and here's the thing too. Back to what I was saying about humans. Okay, they did studies and found out that unlike a car or a machine, okay, if you build a machine, a car, on an assembly line, for example, and say you forget to install a component in that car, okay, at the end of the assembly line, you can bring that car back, put that component on, and the car will run like it never happened. It runs the same as if another car that went through the assembly line didn't miss any components. It runs the same, okay? Not a human being. When a human being is growing and learning, if you forget to install a certain component or certain knowledge, okay, and wisdom into that human being at a certain age, that human being will not learn again, okay? After he passed that age, he or she passed that age. That's the way humans are, okay? It's easier to mold a human being when they're younger than when they're older too, right? You heard of the phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Okay, so that's why a college education early is more beneficial to a person than later. That's just a fact. So the friend of mine that I told you about, he really never really did learn on a deeper level to think deeply at all. That's because of the way he really is, but also his academic program, wherever he went to school, he didn't tell me. Or maybe he didn't go to school, I don't know. But I'm sure he had some education. Otherwise he wouldn't get that logistics job. Okay, so he's valuable in some ways, but can he become a top manager? No, I don't think so. Can't. Doesn't have the insight to become a high level manager. So again, education per se, okay, is not necessarily good for everybody. There are people that don't. They can't. That's not the way they are. They'll be wasting their time in a full-year academic program. It's better for them to learn a trade, for a few months or maybe even a few years, Learn a trade and get out there and produce something to make money, feed themselves. But if they want to get into management, high-level stuff, very complex stuff. I mean, if you get into in the government, for example, the federal government, I'm not talking about state government now, federal government that make decisions that affect the United States of America, okay, for the next 30, 50 years. You better be very smart. You better understand history, okay? You better understand all the roots of problems from the history of humankind, because that's the kind of knowledge you need to make that kind of decision that affects the entire United States for decades or even centuries to come. You see. So those are the people that need that kind of educational background early so that they are able to do that. And incidentally, in another video, I was talking about the 80-10-10 rule, or the 10-80-10 rule, right? In any organization, in any company, there's always this breakout of people. They naturally break out like this. 10% are highly motivated. They're at the top, high achievers. 80% are most everyone. They do their job, maybe a little bit more. And then the lazy ones at the bottom 10%, where they barely do their job just to keep their job. 10-80-10. Every organization is like that. In fact, even in the classroom, we talk about college, right? It's like that, right? Bell curve, right? That's what a bell curve is all about. 10% always get A's, right? Always get 100, 95, 98, okay? The bottom 10% always get F's. Most people in the middle somewhere, the 80%, okay? Now, look at the rate of bachelor's degree back then, 14%. Interesting, huh? 14% of the people back then are degreed, bachelor degreed, okay? So about 10% of them are in management position. They're at the top. The 4 didn't make it for whatever reason. So that's why it's 14%. But you see how it reflects the stratification of the position, social position. Back then it's very clear. Now it's still 10% at the top. But then now you have 38%, 37.5, 38% of the population with the bachelor's degree. That's why they can't. Most of those 38% are in between. They're back in the 80%. Most of them. Only a few would be at the top 10%. Anyways. So why waste your time? Why waste your money? If you're not the type that likes to be in management, like to think deeply, like to change the world, don't go to university. Go get a job or 2-year vocational school or something. Coding is now a vocational school thing. You can go learn coding for a few months, and maybe in a year or two. But that's it. You're not going to learn the humanities. You're not going to learn history. You're not going to learn psychology or sociology, how organizations change and interact. You're not going to learn that, nor do you care. All you care about is, hey, give me a job, I'll do it, I get paid. Most people. So why waste your money? Why burden society with the high student loan debt that you can't pay back, and the society ended up having to pay for it? So with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.